Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to 621's I Did It for Art podcast. My name is Sophia Ballesteros, and in this episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing my friend and Tallahassee artist, Elton Burgest. Elton is an artist whose work covers a wide variety of mediums. He graduated in 2018 with his Bachelor of Fine Arts from Florida State University. If you're from Tallahassee, you've probably seen his work around town. Elton has a mural titled Stop, located on Railroad Avenue at GVO, and another mural located in the Museum of Fine Arts at FSU. I first met Elton in October of 2017. We were both working a Fashion is Art event at a local boutique called Divas and Devils House of Style. The last time we saw each other in person was at the end of last year at another fashion event hosted by 621 called Moving Art, Garments of Expression. This event was something that I had organized throughout my internship in the fall of 2019. And with Elton's help, the event included a figure drawing workshop in which he participated in and did live digital portraits. In my interview with Elton, we discussed the importance of representation in the arts, his comic series Hallelujah, and his show titled Blacklist, which 621 hosted back in May of 2019. We also dive into specific pieces of Elton's work, all of which you can view on his website at eltonaburgest.com, and you can also follow Elton on Instagram at Elton Burgest. This episode will also be available on 621 Gallery's YouTube channel. There, you can follow along with visual components as you listen to our conversation. I hope you enjoy listening to this interview as much as I did conducting it. Without further ado, 621 is happy to present Elton Burgest. Hello, Elton. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's no secret that you work really hard. I feel like you really do it all, from digital paintings, illustrations, graphic design, installation art, performance art. And with all that being said, do you have a preferred medium? And does that change throughout your creative process?
Thank you. Honestly, whenever I have something to do or say, I try to think of the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes performance is the best way to do something. Sometimes the digital painting is the best way to do something. And sometimes a mural is the best way to spread a message, I try to do multiple things so I'm not so I don't feel stagnant and put in one category. And I appreciate you acknowledging that. But for me, that's a good question. Depends on the job, really. I like doing murals after the fact. Before and after, the murals are great. But for me, it's a pain to do them during it, during the process. But it's kind of tied between murals and digital painting because, I don't know, I feel like I have a lot more control when I have the computer than doing a mural outside. That's a lot.
All eyes on you working on it.
Yeah. Digital painting is more of sometimes it's meditative when you're just by yourself on the computer playing music or podcast or a random movie in the background. It's very relaxing to just go and work. But a mural is more of you're so exposed to what you're doing and people are going to walk up to you and talk to you and stuff. Each medium gives its own challenges, but I think my favorite, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably digital painting. I'm so used to doing it and I can carry it on a flash drive. I don't have to worry about it raining when I'm when I'm working, or is this the right material? What's the right paint? Digital is digital. All I gotta do is worry about file size. Yeah, a lot more flexible. You can hit the undo button if you mess up. It takes a long time to fix a mistake in a painting than it does digitally.
So, in your artist statement, which people can find on your website, eltonaburgest.com.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's interesting how you said that. It's just someone else said it out loud. Wow, that is what it says.
You mentioned your use of religious imagery and saturated colors. You also talk about the importance of representation in your work, specifically for African Americans. To quote you directly,
yeah.
As I dive into stories of police brutality, racial profiling, and harsh sentencing, I notice the curse of being conscious of racism. So can you enlighten me and the listeners on what you mean when you say the curse of being conscious of racism?
I guess as people are now realizing, a lot of white people are realizing that racism isn't over with and that it happens on a day-to-day basis. I think the curse of it is now, like, you're not blissfully unaware of it. You're now aware of everything. And the more you look at different structures in society, the more you realize that everything is sort of pitted against you, from getting a job to voting to misdemeanors or having a child, or, there's always some random law that's pitted against you or amplifies systems that are against you. For me, it makes me kind of sad and has like a bleak outlook on life sometimes, because you realize how much of things are stacked against you and how people ignore it, and your white counterparts sort of live in this system that propels them, but then you're sort of on the other end pushing them up. And you sort of get frustrated on the every day-to-day life. Like, people don't teach your history in the classroom. It's an abridged version, if even. I mean, even in art school, they don't really talk about Black art. You have to take a separate class, and it's like, it's not forced to learn this stuff, but African Americans have to know this stuff to even survive. You know what I'm saying? To be aware of what's against you so you won't be caught. I guess realizing, you just take the behind the curtain. It's like this sad, this messed up thing that now you have to be aware of. And you question people's motivations and sympathies now because of the things you're aware of and the things that you've read and the things that you've learned. Like, you're not sure if this is a person being funny, or is this a microaggression, or is this, a system, is this systemic, or is this just a one-time incident? You sort of question everything. And I guess that's the curse of it. Like, you're now aware of everything. And so now you're suspicious of everything being against you, which is probably the safest thing to do, to be suspicious of everything and every action. Like, why is this happening? Is this race related, or is this racial? And it weighs on you as a Black person, being aware of this and making art about it. I kind of get so burdened by it. And I speak for me personally, because I don't like to have one Black person, speak for all Black people. I do not speak for all Black people, because we're not a monolith, because people like to use Black people's quotes to discredit other Black people. And I don't want to be a part of that. But I feel like when I research this stuff and when I watch these things, I get really low and depressed, and I have to take like a few days off. And that's kind of why I've been on hiatus of making like really racial work, or the work pertaining to racial injustice currently in this country, because of how much it weighs on me. Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. You also compare yourself to a police officer, saying, "I feel a sense of duty to sacrifice my state of mind to constantly remind people of the importance of justice," which you kind of just touched on in your response to the last question. So how do you feel like this statement translates into your work?
I guess for like a police officer, right? Like, what a police officer should be is someone who upholds the law and fights for justice, right? So in my paintings, I like to give like metaphors or talk about different things that are against civil rights of people, should be illegal, but are still happening today. And it's been happening, and people's turned a blind eye to it. So I guess in my ability as an artist, this is me trying to spread the word. This is what I'm doing, contributing to society. My sense of justice is to call things out in a way where people are sort of attracted to the visuals, but then read deeper into it. It's about something, something else. I don't know. I think police officers should uphold the law, and they should protect people, and they should be the good guys, right? The moral figures of the society. But that's not happening. That's not the case necessarily. I feel like someone has to do that job, and I'm not saying just me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm saying someone has to do that, and this is my part in doing that.
I wanted to ask you about your digital painting, Disciples. And one of my questions regarding this piece was, why did you title it Disciples?
I guess it's like the term, like disciples is like students, and it's like students of what, you know? And I thought about church, but also like what is authority? Like in the Black community, you don't disrespect God and you don't disrespect the police, you know? Those are the two things you don't really mess with. And the results of both is death, basically. And so like having your hands up is seen as like that sense of respect, or that you're praising God with your hands up, right, in church. And that's like you surrendering to him. You surrendering to God, you surrender your life to him. With the police lights, right, you surrender your will to them and they can do whatever they want to you. And should police have that authority is what I'm asking in this. Is resistance a death sentence? Is non-compliance a death sentence? Is talking back to a police officer a death sentence? You know, pissing off a police officer a death sentence? You know, the same authority we give God, we give police, and they feel perfectly justified in that. And I think disciples, like we're learning, we're learned and conditioned to feel that way, that our lives are in their hands, and we can die, we can be killed because of how they're feeling at the current moment, just like the same authority we give God in church. And so that's something we learn, like disciples, you know, disciples of Jesus, but disciples of, you know, like students were learned in the system, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that insight with this piece.
No problem.
In May of 2019, you had a show at 621 titled Blacklist, and I wanted to ask you about some of the pieces featured in the show. Those include, but are not limited to, your works titled Communion, Marry Me, and Death, all of which are digital paintings. And all of these works have this contrast between the light and the dark. What I mean by that is your choice to remove background details and to replace it with Blackness. Can you speak on your creative process and your choice with these pieces to omit the background and use this intense lighting to highlight the subjects in these pieces?
I think my favorite painter is Caravaggio, and he uses Baroque style in the lighting, which is like very contrast and heavy blacks and heavy darks, and his religious paintings really do speak to me. And I really admire the way he shows people and their faces come out really well when the background is completely black, sort of like a stage on in a play. Like you're definitely focused on the subjects. And I think I really love subjects. So I wanted to depict Black people instead of like Caravaggio would depict like a white David or a white Jesus, you know. I would depict a black people in those religious settings. And being a Black man and a Christian, it is kind of weird to see white Christians be racist, you know what I'm saying? It's weird because that's not what Christianity is supposed to be. And I think it's because of the whitewashing of biblical figures. And I think if people start to see biblical figures as they actually were instead of something that they fantasize about, then it's like, then people would actually realize that we're all the same. So that's a little bit of why I use Caravaggio. I thought, man, it would be really cool to see a Black person as the subject in these paintings. And so I decided to just do that with a modern setting, but also I love the sort of paths with the sheets in the, I like using sheets because of the folds, and it calls back to those periods of painting, the classic periods. And I feel like Black people are starting to catch up in art in that way, that they're starting to make their own masterpieces. And it's an exciting time for Black artists. So I wanted to add that to my pieces.
That technique is called tenebrism, right? That use of the shadows and the light and the darkness.
Yeah.
A lot of these works were featured in the gallery. They were also accompanied by physical objects such as a flower, what I'm assuming was a Bible with ropes surrounding it, and a red cloth. So what was your intention with placing these objects alongside these works?
Okay, with the Bible, it's kind of like what I said earlier with white Christians sort of using the Bible to justify enslaving black people and murdering black people. So I put a rope around the Bible, sort of like a signal that it was being connected to slavery, and signifies that it's entangled with it, like the rope. Yeah, as a Christian, it's kind of hard to feel okay about that, and it sort of makes me angry sometimes. And sometimes it's conflicting, especially when stories come out about Dylan Roof, and you have to like sit there and think about like this man prayed with these black people and then decided to kill them. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would God allow these black people to be killed? You think so much about that, but I think this is a constant battle in my spirit, that I have to understand that people have free will, and God gave us free will for that, to do really good things. But in that consequence, people will do really bad things. And that's something that I've come to terms with, that people will choose to do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the Bible is kind of entangled with racism and the way it's been used against people. It also coordinates with the rope. So I wanted to have something extra outside of the piece to sort of connect. With the red cloth in front of Marry Me, I was talking about motherhood, and the piece about Marry Me is about black women dying in prenatal care at an odd rate. And people suggest that that's because doctors aren't listening to black women when they're complaining. And it's not really encouraged for black women to see doctors, or a lot of jobs black women have sometimes they don't have coverage. So a lot of black women either die during pregnancy or the baby dies. They have a lot of problems and issues at an alarming rate compared to their counterparts. So I wanted to talk about that by using Mary as an example. The disconnect that people see, like Jesus was a baby and we cry about his life. But when a black mother is having trouble having a baby, like people just write that down as a statistic, but that's also a baby, right? Why is that not cared for? And I wanted to add the three figures in that story. Joseph, he's wearing some more of a modern jean jacket and glasses. Mary is dressed like Mary. She was like a refugee running from, was it Hagar, who wanted to kill all the boys, the newborn babies, within 2 years because he heard of the prophecy that the King of Jews would be born. So they had to escape. And so I wanted to talk about how in Jesus' time, like they faced difficulty. And then the timeline between that and now, there's still women facing difficulty giving birth. And so that's why I kind of had Joseph wearing modern clothing, because of the sort of like the gap, but it's still the same thing that's happening. And then the doctor is in like the position of the angel Gabriel, and he's sort of like standing over him, but he's not acknowledging them. In that, I want to talk about how racism, like just silence and just not doing your best to help somebody, is also sort of killing them, right? In the case of a doctor, right? You're just doing your job. But if you do like minimal, or you don't go above beyond as a doctor, what happens? And I wanted to show like this doctor not acknowledging either of them. So the prop is sort of like an umbilical cord, and it's all red, so it signified like that death. And it's the same cloth wrapped around Mary's stomach. People celebrate the baby Jesus, but when black babies are dying in prenatal care, like, why aren't y'all concerned about that? Like, why is that just a fact that we have to just acknowledge because you just suggest like it's a lack of education or they don't have health insurance? But how can you help these people if you claim to be so into helping people? Like like everyone. That's kind of what I'm talking about in Marry Me. In Communion, I did a flower because this piece was a personal piece with grandma, I wanted to talk about the modern, like the family structure in Black houses, sort of a matriarchal system, and how hair is like that connecting branch. And I just wanted to show like a glimpse of what usually is the case. You have a mother, an older male, and then children, like descendants. A flower that sort of represents that life. And that was more of a personal piece to me.
I also want to ask you about the installation process of these pieces. So I guess one of the beauties of doing digital paintings is that you can present it in different forms. And with this show in particular, these pieces were presented in kind of like a collage style. It's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And you use fractions of these works on individual pieces of paper and stapled them together to create the full image, some of which you put over pieces of fencing. So why did you choose to present these works in that way at the time?
Okay, so with the collage style, I remember I used to do it in a grid-like pattern, like I lined it up perfectly, but I always felt it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. It felt like I was just printing it out and putting it together like a puzzle piece. But I was wondering why I was doing that. And then I realized, I looked around in my art studio at FSU. I was in the BFA program. We had our own studios. And I looked around and all my pieces, all my art was overlaid on top of each other. And I realized that I really like doing overlays. And so I came with the idea that I should probably just overlay it more and more and more. And funny enough, it looked like walls in New York City, like posters, right? Like posters layered on top of each other. And I stapled them together. And this was during my installation. I usually glued them because I thought that was like wheat pasting on the wall, like like you would see flyers or posters in New York. The glue wasn't working, and it was it was intense. And it was during install week of my BFA show, and I still didn't know what to do. But then a museum assistant, Wayne, said, "Why don't you just staple it?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so I go about stapling it, and I realized like some of the staples were on top of the skin. And so I just started to staple them in like a pattern of like surgical staples. And so it sort of looked like I'm pinning these to like light posts or electrical posts on the street, but also it looks like I'm trying to repair something. So I'm trying to say a message, and I put it on the wall, sort of because I feel like that's usually the language of people who have been hurt, is that they protest, they put up flyers, they put it out there that this is what's happening. And so I use the staples and make them in like a surgical way to show that I'm trying to heal from this, or I'm trying to show this so I can heal. Like this is the first process of a major tear. So I felt like this was sort of like me fixing a gash in a way. And I used fences. I painted fences the same color as the wall in the museum, sort of like to show that imaginary fence, or that invisible fence between us, and sort of like that white picket fence is like that American dream to move away from poverty, to move away from the problems of the poor and live blissfully in a suburb. I chose a picket fence and stapled my work to it to show that, hey, these things are still happening. You need to acknowledge it. And I stapled it to the invisible wall, which is sort of what these issues are addressing. Like why are Black families a matriarch structure? You know, it's just sort of like me subtly talking about the prison system in a way. That's why I'm wearing a wife beater, because I felt like I should have wore an orange jumpsuit, but I feel like that would have been like too much on the nose. But maybe I feel like now that I like think back, I probably should have got an orange jumpsuit. But I don't know. That should be for another piece.
Everything that you said about stitching together the pain, the wounds, the fence representing the home and the invisible line. Yeah, I felt like that really translated well. So thank you for explaining that even further.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. And also, my intention doesn't discredit like your interpretation of the work. So if anyone has like another interpretation, that is also valid. Um, yeah.
Moving on to death, to quote you once again, regarding this piece, you say, "This is a digital painting about the cycle of Black death and how it relates to Christ. I think about Jesus being an innocent man killed for our sins, a true martyr, one that America accepts. It's interesting how those same white Christians cannot empathize with an innocent Black man dying now than one dying 2,000 years ago." So for this piece, can you talk about the subjects as well as the religious symbolism?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to make a piece with Jesus in it. I thought that'd be really cool. And I also wanted to talk about, like, again, white Christian hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
So this piece was actually funny. I had to take this. I got with Serenity Cafe. I had a photo shoot there, and it was pretty fun. It was intense because we had to like block off some lighting. We had got some we got some lights from Engaged Church. Me and my friend Jonathan Batchelor. Yeah, we were both worked on this. We collaborated, and it was pretty fun with this piece. So it's like they're at a funeral, right? And they're all dressed in black. And you sort of see these funerals now. I mean, you just look at George Floyd funeral, you know, dead Black men, and people are crying about it. And I wanted to talk about this cycle of sort of like these stages that you go through. Some people deal with grief differently, sort of quiet, looking down. And then you go back to the TV and see what happens next, you know. The state of constantly seeing something and things constantly happening and nothing really changes. Sort of talking about police brutality as well, and how the TV does this when you have no signal. It's like a blue screen. You're not connected to anything, and I guess the message isn't connecting to people. And you know, I had the rope to signify the lynching that happens, and sort of the torture. Like we can cry about Jesus on the cross, but you know, it's just crazy, right? When people cry about Jesus on the cross, but then you talk about lynching or like a historical figure, like Confederate people, you know, statues and stuff, they don't make the connection, but then they go to church. And I feel sort of like, wow, like really? Like y'all don't see the connection here?
Yeah.
Jesus rose from the dead 3 days later, right? And he came back. I feel like that cycle happens. There's always a Black martyr for police brutality, right? There's always a Black man dying for police brutality for us to like, oh, this is bad now, you know, like this is bad. We should stop this. 2 weeks go by. Oh, this is bad. We should stop this. You know, a month goes by. Oh, this is bad. We should stop this. You become a hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
People will still sin basically, and you know it's like Jesus died for our sins, but you still sin, you know, and it's kind of like that sentiment, like wow, that was sad in the moment, you're like sad about it, but then life goes on, and then another Black man dies due to the police brutality, and I just wanted to show like that's why Jesus is coming back to life. He's dead and then he comes back to life, and then they go back to the TV. And it's sort of like the cycle doesn't stop.
So what is the message that you want people to take away from this work? And do you think that that message could be different depending on if the viewer is a Black or white person or someone of a different race or ethnicity?
Like I said earlier, like I can't control people's interpretation. I don't know. I want to attract people to the piece at first, but subtle things, you know, like the woman's earring, right? That's kind of obvious. Like this is a Christian piece, right? The rope, the dead Black man on the table, but wearing the cloth, the red cloth. This actually, fun fact, the same red cloth that Mary was having in the other piece. So I guess that's like a subtle connection that I'm doing. Sort of like a series. In this series, they're at a funeral, and then the TV, I guess the TV might lose some people, but like I said, people's interpretation, I get like I can't always be there when someone's looking at the piece. So I feel like it's up to me as an artist to give that message properly through the piece. But I think people understand elements, but may not be able to connect it all together. But in that, that's kind of fun. I don't know. It's kind of fun that you probably have to do more research on it. Most of the time, I would have a description next to my piece.
Yeah, and I think that's also the importance of having the artist statement beforehand or afterwards, just so they can understand the artist's perspective, their intentions, where they're coming from.
Yeah. I agree. You should definitely have that around so people know what's going on.
Yeah. You also talk about how people's reactions to your work is something that really excites you. I wonder if you've ever been in a situation where people are viewing your work, analyzing it, talking about it in front of you without realizing that you're the artist.
With murals, yeah, because I don't really put my name on the murals I do. So
Mm-hmm.
people talk about, like, it'd be fun, like people talk about it, or like that happens more with graphic design. Like I worked for Campus Rec while I was at FSU, so people would have the stickers, and I would ask them about it, And I worked for the museum, and people liked the buttons and stuff. It was funny. It's super fun to talk to people about my work because I get honest feedback, especially if they don't know me. So that's very exciting. I think I appreciate it a lot more now that I'm out of school, because when you're in school, you constantly get feedback from your friends and from professors about your work. But once you're out of school, no one's asking about your work. No one's telling you need to get this assignment, and no one's wondering like, hey, when are you going to make this? They're just living their lives, and you have to push yourself to release more stuff. So definitely feedback is all welcome. I used to hate criticism, but now it's like, man, that helps me get better. Help me out.
So, have you found that people's opinions of your work have changed after meeting and speaking with you?
Yeah, definitely. I think people are initially attracted to it. They like the piece, but once I describe what it means, they're like, their eyes are open, and they definitely appreciate it a lot more now that they know what's going on. I think people see my pieces as like people just standing around sometimes, but then I tell them what's going on, and then they're like, "Whoa!" So it is interesting. It's really it's entertaining to see people do that. So I understand why you ask that question. I don't know, as an artist, like should I do what I want, or should I make sure people know what I'm talking about? I guess that's the question that I have to ask myself.
And it's probably a little bit of both, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is a little bit of both. I just feel like my perspective isn't talked a lot about in art. I guess having an art statement next to my work, making sure it's written next to my work, would bridge the gap.
Yeah. When you had your show at 621, did you do the soft opening, the artist talk?
Yeah. That was fun.
That's definitely like my favorite kind of event that 621 does. A lot more intimate than First Friday, and getting to like talk to the artists and ask them questions.
Oh yeah. Shout out to 621 for giving artists a voice, not just showing their work. Yeah, that was fun. The artist talk was pretty funny because my grandma asked me about the piece that she was in, because I asked if anyone had questions, and she said she had a question about this piece, and then everyone started chuckling. That was fun. My friends brought flowers. It was amazing. It was amazing. I think that was really, really good. And it's so satisfying as an artist to see people like talk to you about your work. That no, like this wasn't a waste of time, or people actually care about this thing. And I felt validated. It's very validating to see your work on a wall. Um, and people looking at it without. I think the best part about being an artist, I don't know, just in general, is just people looking at your work without you asking them to. And talking to people about it with you not even involved in that conversation, like complete strangers looking at your work, and you just like, you see that and you're like, dang, that's actually cool. Like I had their attention.
So you have a comic series titled Hallelujah. Tell me a little bit more about your comic and what motivated you to begin this series.
As I mentioned earlier in this interview, I felt very weighed down by the work that I was making, and so I decided to take a break from it. And I always wanted to do comics. I took a class in college. I'm really cool with the professor. We're friends on Facebook. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep that going. And so I decided to make a comic. I had this story in my head for so long since I was in middle school. I just decided to do it. And Hallelujah is that story. It's about a queen trying to save her grandson. She wants to admit him into this private school. That's like the basic premise. The thing about it is, it's like the whole book is full of Black people. So the topic of race isn't approached or talked about because everyone is Black. And I felt like that's sort of like an escape from me. I think escapist art is healthy, especially for Black people, because you're living in this reality where it's harsh, and then you see it in media, history books. Like you have to have an escape at some point, and I felt like I wanted to provide that with my book, and it's about people who fight demons through their connections with God, and I felt like that was something that I would like to read as a kid, that I would be interested in as a kid, and I want other people to sort of be interested in it as well. People who have those same sentiments.
That's awesome. What are some of your favorite comics?
Favorite comics? Akira is one of my favorite comic books. Let's see, what do I have over here? Vagabond. My friend Sara Caruso introduced me to Vagabond. That is beautifully drawn. It's about the samurai, and each panel looks like it took hours to draw. It's so good. Dragon Ball Z. I like Demon Slayer. My favorite comics. I used to read Ultimate Spider-Man when I was a kid. Naruto. Just a lot of different things, and looking at those and thinking like, man, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Black character in these, right? And I mean, I'm a creative person, so I was just like, I'll just make my own character. So I did. So I just made my own characters and their own character story arcs and stuff like that. So I just was like, I'm just gonna do that, make my own thing, and I think that's what's important. I really don't want creatives just to insert Black people into stories because they want to like seem inclusive. I want Black people to have their own thing, so they don't have to like beg creators to do that. I want Black people to be inspired to create their own comics and their own forms of media and their own magazines, and then just be popping. So when those creatives that didn't want to put Black people in, they suffer from that. So that's kind of something that I'm doing with my own thing.
Are there characters in Hallelujah that are based on you, or that you like really resonate with and identify with?
Let's see, characters that resonate with me. I like Elena, which is this character riding the bike with her tongue out. I resonate with her because she wants to do right by people, and then she ends up finding herself in situations she doesn't want to be, and things keep happening that are out of her control, and that sort of aggravates her. So I kind of see myself as her. Some in situations, I think that's relatable. I think we all kind of find ourselves in situations that we can't control, that we don't want to be in. So yeah, her definitely. I think she wants to protect people, and that kind of gets her in trouble.
So you have an art show based on Hallelujah coming out on June 19th.
Oh yeah.
And I know I'll probably mispronounce this, but is it Evdikal Gallery?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but that's that's good. Evdikal Gallery. I never said it out loud. I always read it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my friend Colleen from FSU, she's living in Turkey right now, and she reached out to me for a show, and she is reading the comic, and she really likes it. So we decided she wants to do a show, so it's going to be on Instagram, so anyone can experience it. She's gonna live stream. It's gonna be me and her talking on live stream. That's on Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be fun. I think it's really gonna be a great show. I'm really happy about everything. It's kind of funny. I'm taking like 4 drawings from the comic and recoloring them, and at the end, I'm going to release my chapter 6 of the comic at the end of that week. It's gonna be through the 19th to the 26th. It's gonna be my show, and so throughout the week we're gonna live stream drawing sessions with me and stuff like that. So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be really fun. This is stuff that I get really excited about making, and it's something that I never pictured myself being good at. I still don't feel like I'm good at it, but I feel like I'm okay. So it means a lot that someone wants to showcase my work in that way.
Do you have any other works coming up that you want to share with people?
I got an email today about something, but I can't really talk about it. It just seems like it's getting worked in the process. But exciting things are happening. I think this day and age, Black artists are starting to get recognized for their work. It seems like people are now waking up to things and realize that Black artists have been talking about these things since the dawn of time, you know? So it's really exciting. Now people are, I hope people will start paying attention to Black artists and what they have to say, you know?
One of my last questions for you. Who are some of your favorite local artists that we should be looking out for?
My favorite artists that we should be looking out for? Man, that's a good question. There's a lot of people. Mikayla Gamble. Mm-hmm. She's in LA right now, but she's an amazing photographer. I think, oh man, her work is so good. Like, yeah, her photography is amazing. Mm-hmm. Speaking of photographers, Claudia Guerrera, she's pretty good as well. Man, I know a lot of people. I feel bad for not shouting out certain people.
I kind of put you on the spot there.
You put me on the spot. You should have told me about this so I came up with a list or something, man. Who else?
I actually know Mikayla.
You know Mikayla?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had the privilege of doing a photo shoot with her a few years ago. She's awesome. I love her work as well.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. Sara Caruso is good. Who else? Man, you should have sent me an email. I'm gonna have a list. I'll send you a list of people. Yeah, because I'm like on the spot right now. It's kind of hard to think.
There's just so many.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Yeah.
Last question before we wrap up this interview. And it's a general question. What are some of your hopes for the future? And that can be in life, in your career.
Well, one, my hopes for the future is to really work on Hallelujah to the point where I'm in like a rhythm, and it's like clockwork, and my work within that gets progressively better. Mm-hmm. But also to start a Black art school for just Black artists, so I can help advance Black art in a way where it's more than just surface level. It's like teaching Black artists about techniques and stuff. So it's not just one token artist, Black artist that gets famous. It's a lot of them, you know. Yeah, and just actually have a Black art community, and so people can connect and actually like, oh, I know this amount of Black artists, and it's not just only the Black artists who know Black artists, that everyone knows these artists. Mm-hmm. I think that's important. You know, I feel like Black artists' voices sort of get drowned out, or they it's like one that gets picked as the Black artist in this show. You know, I hope to elevate my people to a stage in art. Well, not just me, but I hope to be a part of that.
Well, Elton, thank you so much again for taking the time and speaking with me. I really enjoyed talking to you and seeing you after many months of not seeing each other.
Yeah. No, it's rough out here. No, I appreciate you reaching out and interviewing me, giving me like a platform to talk.
61 Gallery would like to thank Elton Burgest once again for the opportunity to interview him for our I Did It for Art podcast programming. And if you're wondering, Elton did get back to me with his list of artists that we should look out for. Here it is.
Menika Lue, Jabari Townsend, Briana Michelle, Bobby Riley, Maurizio, Sara Caruso, Sophia Baldwin, Dillon Gleeson, Giavonna Alverez, Betül Adalier, Mizadel, April Clues, Naira Diptee, and Mikayla Gamble.
This list will also be available in the description of this episode. Follow Elton on Instagram at Elton Burgest. And while you're there, give us a follow too at 621_gallery. At this point in the episode, 621 would like to thank the following people for their generous contributions. Thank you Suzanne Laws, Dan Taylor, the Swamp Buddhas, and James Pafford for your support. And a big thank you to our listeners. We will have more podcast episodes coming soon, so stay tuned. If you'd like to see even more content from us, you can support 61 Gallery on Patreon, where we provide more interviews, tutorials, and 61 merchandise when you sign up with us on this platform. Visit us at patreon.com/621 Gallery for more information. We are planning to reopen this coming August, and measures will be taken to ensure the safety of our guests in the gallery. We are looking forward to hosting artists Kate Kinder and Susan Hensel. Kate Kinder's work poses many questions on humanity's relationships with objects in our world, as well as our own roles as physical objects in the universe. Using vibrant colors and patterns, Kinder creates scenes of domestic life. Visit her website at katekinder.com to check out her work before her exhibition here at 621. Susan Hensel is a multidisciplinary artist that combines embroidery work with technology. She also focuses on sculptural work and, like Kinder, uses an array of colors in her art. To learn more information on Hensel's work, you can visit her website at susanhenselprojects.com. This podcast is created by 621 Gallery interns and features people who have crossed paths with 621, spanning nearly 4 decades. Join us on this podcast journey, handing you over to 621 correspondents who report from studios, conduct interviews, and more for 621's I Did It for Art podcast programming. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to do it for art.